Hello, and welcome to #Remember. I'm your host, John Nelson. In #Remember, we shine a light on the people of the industry that are helping out firefighters and their families. Today, we're joined by retired Broward County, Florida Sheriff Fire Rescue Assistant Chief Todd LeDuc. That's a mouthful. In addition to his 30 years of service, Chief LeDuc is also a 15-year board member of the International Association of Fire Chiefs Safety, Health, and Survival Section Board of Directors, and is on the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation's First Responder Center of Excellence Advisory Board for Firefighter Physicals. He also co-authored the IAFC Healthcare Provider's Guide to Firefighter Physicals and is an editor of Fire Engineering's book, Surviving the Fire Service. Along with the aforementioned, Chief LeDuc works with Lifescan Wellness and their partners to enhance innovative early detection screenings, helping to identify occupational cardiac disease, cancer, and behavioral health. Chief Todd LeDuc, welcome to #Remember.
John, thank you for having me. Thanks for all the work that you do, and thanks for sharing the message with the fire service of health and wellness and safety. So I'm excited to be with you today.
Absolutely, sir. We definitely want to get the word out on what you guys are doing. Todd, as you know, the 16 firefighter life safety initiatives that are the central focus of the NFFF and also what we do at After the Fire podcast, if you would, could you please tell us about the Tampa Summits that you were involved with? Because a lot of folks don't really know what goes on at the Tampa Summits or what they're even all about. And what is your involvement, or what was your involvement in the development of the 16 life safety initiatives, particularly Life Safety Initiative number 6, which is the medical and physical fitness?
Absolutely, John. So, we really have to give credit to the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation and the work that they've done with the Tampa 1 and then the Tampa 2 Summit, which were really gatherings bringing together a diverse group of leaders in the American Fire Service from all different spectrums, career departments, labor, volunteer departments, the researchers, chiefs, frontline personnel, really the broad spectrum that makes up the American Fire Service. And this happened twice, and gatherings were held in Tampa, focusing on one main mission, and that was how do we reduce preventable firefighter deaths and the tragedies, that we all see and have seen in the fire service. And so like any large gathering, we had a number of facilitators that broke out into different topics, focusing on the different areas that would need to be addressed if we were to continue to be successful in reducing preventable deaths. So you mentioned one in particular, and that was the focus on early annual physicals, comprehensive physicals for firefighters. We know that certainly from occupational health risks, whether we're talking about cancer, whether we're talking about cardiovascular death, or we're talking about behavioral health and firefighter suicide, much of those disease processes can be identified early through comprehensive annual physicals, and then we can manage them before they have a tragic consequence all too often. So that was a large focus of the Tampa gatherings. We were anticipating having a third Tampa Summit, and that kind of fell right in the middle of the pandemic. So that's a work in progress. But specifically on firefighter physicals, much work has been done on that front. But clearly much more needs to be done so we can make further inroads on reducing preventable death of our brother and sister firefighters.
Definitely. According to initiative number 6, I wanted to dive a little deeper into that one, the medical and physical fitness. The United States Fire Administration was quoted to say 737,000 firefighters serve in fire departments with no program to maintain basic health, most of them volunteers with less than a population of 5,000 people. And that was in 2006, which was 15 years ago. So have those numbers changed at all?
Sadly, progress have been as quick as I think many would like. But that number that you quoted, it's a needs survey that was done, and it showed about 70% of departments did not have a formal health and wellness program. And I like to look at it this way. I was doing a webinar recently, and there were several hundred attendees, and I asked on that webinar, how many folks attending this webinar have a preventative maintenance program in place for your apparatus? And almost 100% of attendees said, absolutely we do. We'd never think of getting into an engine or a truck company, with the brakes not being maintained, but that same question, when I asked health and wellness or annual physicals, less than 50% said that we were applying that same standard to our personnel. So you asked the timeliness in 2016, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, and you mentioned I'm blessed to serve on the board of directors of Safety, Health, and Survival with some very talented and passionate colleagues and coworkers. We did a follow-up survey to some of the questioning of how well are we doing at providing our firefighters physicals in the United States. And what we found is those that responded in career departments, still 20% of career departments were providing no type of annual physicals. That number became even higher when we looked at the volunteer side of the house. And then when we asked what type of behavioral health, if any, screenings are you providing for your firefighters, that number was only 10% of departments had any type of behavioral health screening. So clearly we need to do more. Having said that, there's more discussion. This opportunity today is a great example. I tell the story all the time that 10, 15 years ago, when I was speaking at a conference on firefighter health and wellness and physicals, you would be lucky if you got 2 people in the room. Today, whether you're at, FDIC or Firehouse or anywhere, the room is typically packed. So we are making progress. Again, I think it's probably slower than certainly I would like, because every time and I'm sure like you, John, you're on the line, you're on the job. Every time we see a firefighter fatality report come out and it's a sudden cardiac death, or I see another name being put on the wall at Colorado Springs from occupational cancer, or you read a firefighter suicide, I kind of give pause to myself. And I certainly did this as a chief for many years, in question and say, was that preventable? Did we have to lose that firefighter? And, we can't, I don't know if we'll ever eliminate 100% of the risk of being in our profession as firefighters. It's inherently a risky occupation, but certainly the health risks, we know that through early detection, if we find a cancer early, it has typically an excellent outcome. We know if we identify modifiable risk factors for cardiac, or if we identify that someone's having a behavioral health struggle early and we intervene, the outcomes typically are very, very positive, and they get back on the job. They have a long career, and then they enjoy a healthy and long retirement with their grandkids and just enjoy the fruit of their labor. So, a national goal for us has to be that we get every firefighter in the country not only a physical, but an occupationally appropriate physical, because we know that as firefighters, our health risk is uniquely different than almost any other occupation. So a physical for a teacher or a banker or a stockbroker is vastly different from being tailored to the health risks that we as firefighters face. So that needs to be our national priority. If we want to change the cycle of losing firefighters from preventable occupational health risk. And we are getting there. I've said anecdotally, one perhaps silver lining of the pandemic is I've seen more departments focusing on the health and the welfare of their members than almost any time in my career, my service. So I think through shows and services like what you're doing in terms of helping get that message out, we are seeing a prioritization for taking care of our people. And like I said, I hate to be so crass to correlate it to apparatus, but I had a wise mentor of mine tell me a little bit ago that if you don't have healthy firefighters, you really don't have a fire department. And that always stuck with me. And there's a lot, whether you're a chief, whether you're a labor leader, or whether, you're at the tip of the spear on the line, we all have a responsibility to take care of each other. And annual comprehensive physicals are a large part of that.
Absolutely. It's one thing to point these things out. I know you mentioned in a lot of your speeches and things, videos and stuff that you guys have done, that the big three that are killing firefighters are cancer, cardiovascular, and suicide. If we put the microscope on the physical and mental well-being of firefighters, those are the big three. But it's one thing to point these out. I mean, I think we all know it, right? You said it yourself. The line of duty deaths that we're seeing there are a lot of cardiovascular related situations. Cancer is starting to rear its ugly head quite often in our LODD reports. So how do we actually change this? And I know you guys are doing a lot, just to raise awareness. We're doing a lot on our own, but how does the firefighting industry convince itself that there are some real problems that we've had for a long time and that we must address these instead of just, going with the old adage, just do things how they've always been done? You hear that a lot when it's like, why do we do it this way? Because that's how it's always been done. I think subconsciously we do that with our health too, to some degree. So how do we convince a volunteer fire department that, a chief on down, that it's important? Furthermore, how do we convince the union that it's good for your firefighters to be in good health, instead of maybe saying, that physical is a little too much, or we're not going to make you get in trouble because you didn't pass a certain aspect of your physical? How do we overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, John, that's a great question. And at its very root, like you said, I think we all acknowledge that we have cardiovascular heightened risk. And we're just talking about cardiovascular death. So for every cardiovascular death, there's about 17 to 27, the literature would say, non-fatal events. So they're cardiac cripples. They survive, but they have permanent heart damage. Same with cancer. For every cancer death, we have lots of firefighters that battle cancer. They survive it, but they have quite a battle. And the same with suicide. That we have a lot of people on the spectrum of behavioral health. So I think embracing change has to start with how we frame it, right? So and I keep going back to this apparatus analogy because I just love the analogy. I don't think any of us in our right mind would get into an apparatus. I mean, who would get into a tower ladder and drive this thing, putting themselves and the public at risk, and the rest of the crew knowing that it wasn't maintained? I mean, just conceptually, most of us, I don't think we would ever do that. And I think we need to have that kind of same mindset. We need to say, having a physical is not punitive. It shouldn't be. It's about early detection. And that's really how it needs to be framed. And I'll use cancer as probably the easiest way. If we find a cancer at its primary site and we get treatment, so that means we find it very early, right? Or if it's bladder cancer, it's still in the bladder. If it's prostate cancer, it's still in the prostate. Survival is almost 100%. So, you get treatment and boom, you're back on the job. And then we just monitor you over time for reoccurrence. If you don't have that exam and you don't have a robust exam, a firefighter exam, and that cancer spreads, so now it's beyond the primary site. If it's colon, it's outside the colon. If it's bladder, it's outside the bladder. If it's breast and it's outside the breast, the survival rate just drops right off a cliff, and likely you're going to have a very different outcome. And in many cases, you're not going to survive. So I think framing, because what I hear a lot, I hear two issues with physicals. One is they're expensive and we can't afford them. In my answered stat, there's a Spring, Texas, out your way, John, firefighter Matt Corso, who Lifescan Wellness Center provides the physicals for Spring, Texas Fire Department. They're a large combination department. And we found a testicular mass on imaging with Matt Corso. And ultimately it turned out to be testicular cancer that had spread a little bit, but it was still early enough that he survived. And he's got children, he's got a beautiful wife. And he says it in a manner I could never, because I've never battled cancer, he has, but he said, listen, for less than the cost of a Class A dress uniform to bury me in, the department invested in a non-punitive early detection physical. And again, they're a combination department, so they're not a large metro career department. So I think just how we frame it, we need to get away from this mindset of physicals can be, a discipline and you're going to lose your job. And I think, any leader that's focusing on his people, whether that's a career chief, a volunteer chief, a labor leader, we want to make sure that we take care of our people's health. In the National Fallen Firefighters, they say it best, everyone goes home. Well, if we want that to mean something, and we want it to be not just a slogan, and I'm not implying it's just a slogan, but it has to translate into actionable steps. And when we talk, you're absolutely right. I've written about it. You can read some of the articles in fire engineering, the three-legged stool. We've done a tremendous job with reducing fireground fatalities from structural collapse, from burn injuries, we've done a tremendous job of reducing fireground fire deaths. Where we keep losing folks is that three-legged stool that you pointed out: cancer, cardiac, and firefighter suicide. And the only way we're going to change that is incorporating risk reduction strategies, which is what the National Firefighter Foundation has worked so hard to do for years. And incorporated in that is comprehensive annual physicals. We need to just make that a way of doing business. It's not acceptable in my mind that still 20% of our career departments, I think the number was closer to 30 or 40% of volunteer. And that's not even talking about the ones that are doing physicals. Many of them are not specific to firefighters. So they're going to their primary care physician, and it's great that they're seeing someone. But that provider does not necessarily know the unique health risks that firefighters, face. So, it's National Colon Cancer Awareness Month this month. So, it used to be if you were male and age 50, it was time to get your colonoscopy. Now they've recommended, because they're seeing colon cancer much younger in men at 45. But we're firefighters. Firefighters have a 1.2 times higher rate than general population of colon cancer. So maybe we need to be thinking of even earlier screening. But yeah, it has to really be. It can't be. I like to say, physicals need to be the carrot. They shouldn't be a stick. We shouldn't. Whether you're a leader or you're on the line and it's time for your annual physical, it shouldn't be, oh my God, this is something bad. It's it's preventative maintenance on yourself.
I do want to say something to that though, Todd, and I'm going to piggyback on your analogy of the fire truck a little bit. You won't get in an apparatus that's, doesn't have brakes and all that. Makes perfect sense. But what happens to an apparatus that can't be repaired? It's taken out of service, never to be used again. I think a lot of guys are genuinely concerned that that's going to be their outcome. And I think that that's really the fear, right? Like that's what the union is trying to protect. That's why guys are reluctant to participate. And it's just such a massive obstacle. I think everything we're doing is great to bring the attention back, especially, in your 2021 Lifescan Wellness Centers video, you had several staggering statistics there. 65% of firefighters added to the NFFF's Wall of Honor between 2002 and 2018 died from occupational cancer. 65% of them. In the last decade, about half of the line of duty deaths were heart attacks. And according to USA Today, in 2017, more firefighters died by suicide than in the line of duty. So these are real problems, and I think what we're doing is the right thing to do. But how does a fire department, a coworker, a family member, or how do we as individual firefighters, bring this to the forefront to where we can assure that we're not going to get just kind of thrown off to the curb? Workers' compensation doesn't cover us, department won't keep our job. We're just kind of out on our luck, and now we've got this cancer, that we found out we had through an early detection, and it can't be stopped. And I'm thinking worst case scenario here. As you said, a lot of this stuff, early detection is good, and I completely agree with you. But how do we save the guys that, are just kind of innocently hit with these things, and they're afraid for their life, they're afraid for their career? How are they going to provide for their family?
Yeah, that's a great question point, John. And I can tell you, Lifescan Wellness Centers, we see close to 50,000 first responders across the country. And I can tell you, with comprehensive early detection, that percentage is so small of folks that have to be restricted from duty until they get further clearance or they get a little intervention done. So that number is not a large number, but the point that, and I think any department is going to work with those individuals, and we're fortunate in the country, almost I think every state but North Carolina, and they're working like the Dickens to get cancer presumptions. Every state has some type of cancer presumption. So there's benefits, firefighters are covered. You mentioned workman's comp. Most states in the country have very robust heart and lung bills that cover firefighters. But there's two things, right? And even NFPA looks at incumbents versus new hires. So we need to be thinking long term. We need to be thinking, when we hire a firefighter today, we give them the best, the most comprehensive. Lifescan Wellness Centers physicals is a 3-hour physical that includes NFPA 1583 with an exercise physiologist, fitness assessment, stress test, an hour with an ultrasound screening of all the vasculature and organs, and then a full NFPA 1582 physical. So just think about where you would get and how many people get a 3-hour physical. But if we do that for, and it's not a lot of cost, it's probably less than what it costs to maintain your apparatus. If we do that for every new hire, and then we repeat it every year, like NFPA recommends for firefighters, we find things at such an early stage. As an example, a lot of the cardiac deaths are caused from hypertension that we didn't know people had, or we weren't treating it. So if we find, folks like myself that, hey, you get, midlife, now you get a little high blood pressure, you need to lose weight, you need to restrict salt, watch your diet, maybe add a little bit of medication. That prevents the whole issue about having to take people off the line, because we're finding, in the same with cancer. We find cancer. I think I may have shared one of my union, actually Broward's union, did a beautiful video where they had a number of members that had early detection. One of them was a 3-year-old captain of mine. This just happened this fall 2020. Completely asymptomatic, but went in for his Lifescan wellness exam, and on imaging we found a mass within the bladder. And on further follow-up with urology, turns out he's got bladder cancer, but was identified so early. I mean, the urologist said, I've been doing this for 30 years, 3 decades, one of the top urologists in the state of Florida where I'm at. You're the first asymptomatic presentation of a bladder cancer I've seen, is what he told them. He said, usually you have blood in your urine, or you have pain on urination, or distension, or bloating. And so again, that was found on imaging. He went and got treatment. He's, covered under presumption in the state of Florida. 21 cancers, you're presumed to be job related. And he's back. He's going to have a long and great career, Lord willing, and a beautiful retirement with his family. So, yes, I understand if you've been on the job any length of time and you haven't had this, and I think as chiefs, we need to be mindful of that. As union laborers, we need to be mindful that if I've got a 23-year veteran on the job and I'm just now implementing physicals, we need to make sure we do it in a way that if we do find something, we protect our people. So it has to be, fear should not be what's preventing us from taking care of our people. And I think it was Dr. Demings, the father of the quality improvement movement, total quality improvement, continuous quality improvement, whatever you would like to call it. But one of his tenets was to be successful and to be a great organization. Leaders need to drive fear out of the organization. And when we're talking about health and survival, there really, can't be. I can tell you, and John, you'll appreciate this. I mean, you work at a metro department in Broward, where I retired as executive fire chief after 30 years. Large department, 20 some odd, 6, 7, 8 stations. In order to drive fear out of physicals, myself, with a member of the executive board of the union, we visited each and every station on each and every shift. And so do the math on that. I'll use round numbers, 30 stations times 3 shifts, that's approximately 90 station visits, to sit at the coffee table and to explain together with the union, because they had to get this ratified, all the questions you brought up. Why are we doing this? What happens if we find something? And when the troops here, listen, we're going to take care of you regardless of what we find. This is about ensuring at the end of the day, you go home safely, ensuring that if you do have cancer, we don't find it at stage 4 when it's metastasized. We get it early, and your survival is 100%. And today, I think we've been doing it now in Broward with Lifescan wellness centers for close to a decade. There is just tremendous, not only buy-in, but support. As I mentioned, the local just made about a 10-minute video about how wonderful and how comprehensive it is. And so a lot of it is how it's implemented as well. It takes work. You are going to have members in the department that are skeptical, that are fearful, and it's not just a flip of the switch. It requires, honest conversation, leadership, and it requires compassion, because people need to believe that, hey, you've got their back, you're looking out for them, and this is about nothing more than taking care of them. And I'm sure, like you, as a chief, I've gone to far more funerals than I ever would have envisioned when I signed up for paramedic school and fire academy, and then worked my way up for the organization. And again, I think back and say, it was a beautiful funeral, and we paid, tremendous respect, as we should, to the lost member and to their family, and we remember them every year. But in the back of my mind, I always think, if we had comprehensive annual physicals at that point in time, could we have prevented that? And in my mind, it, resonates that maybe we could have.
Absolutely, especially for, the big three: cancer, cardiovascular, and behavioral health. Yeah, you definitely look at that. I can see that reflection. Chief LeDuc, we want to thank you so much for joining us on #Remember and sharing everything that you guys are doing at Lifescan. How can fire departments and individuals contact you or Lifescan or any of the things you're involved with? And, are there any links or things that you would encourage people or heads of fire departments to take advantage of?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank you and NFFF for all the work that you all do. And, it is making a difference, and that's what's encouraging is to watch the change happen. But yeah, there are some resources out there. Lifescan ourselves has a website that's lifescanwellness.com. So you can find out not only about our physicals and our approach. Again, we're pretty much throughout the United States, but we also have a resource toolbox tab on there. And it's broken down by the big three. So you can go on there and find what we tried to do is bring all the resources that are out there together for cancer, cardiac, and behavioral health. And so you can just click on those links. Obviously, there's some other great ones. The National Fallen Firefighters has the Life Safety Initiatives and all the resources under them. The First Responder Center of Excellence, which is a subsidy of the NFFF, and they've got tremendous links and everything we talked about. And then the International Association of Fire Chiefs Safety, Health, and Survival section has a tremendous amount of resources on their website as well. So we have a lot of great organizations all marching to the same beat of trying to reduce preventable deaths. And we're getting there. We just need to keep our foot on the accelerator and embracing how we deliver the message in a manner that helps it be received and not only be received, but be implemented successfully. And I think that is happening. We'll stay at it, and I know you'll stay at it, and all the different organizations will continue to keep moving and get us to as safe a service as we can be. As I said, I think we all realize inherently when we signed up for this job, whether it's exposure to a virus or whether it's, entering a structure, we know there's inherent risk, and we do everything, to do the job and do it as safely as possible by minimizing and managing that risk. But we know that on the health risk, a lot of it's preventable. So that's what we need to focus on is getting a good handle on the prevention of the risk and allowing us to do the job and get it done safely. So thank you for your time and appreciate it. And everyone stay safe out there and stay well.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Todd LeDuc. Thanks again, Chief. We really do appreciate your time. We'd like to remind everyone that we'll have a ton of bonus information and links from Chief LeDuc on afterthefirepodcast.com under the episodes tab. This and all episodes of #Remember and After the Fire podcast can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as afterthefirepodcast.com. If you like what you hear and see, give us a follow on any and all of the social media accounts, and don't forget to add the #Remember in your reposts and comments. We'd really appreciate that, and we'd love to hear from you guys and get your feedback too. And while you're there, make sure you befriend the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation and check out firehero.org for everything going on with the NFFF. Once again, that's firehero.org. We look forward to meeting you and sharing our information with you and yours. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you after the fire.